Okay, this is the first Galaxies patch 10.7 rundown. Looking back on 10.6, we're pretty happy with where Galaxies has landed. There's been a lot of cool features. That being said, I think there was one really big oversight that affected the game in a pretty negative way. Five costs in particular have been a bit strong, and by a bit strong, I mean a lot strong, like warp being strong. So in this patch, expect to see some things there, as well as some new features and some other adjustments. So let's jump into it. First thing you'll notice in this patch, the Galaxies set mechanic is launching. There is a 55% chance you are at a normal game, but there is a 45% chance you will get one of these. The Nicoverse, which everyone has played before, where you get 2 free copies of Nico's Help. The Lilac Nebula, where the first carousel contains 4 costs, opening up some new strategies. And the Medium Legends Galaxy. This is a new one. If you haven't played PBE, this is one that was not on PBE before we went live. This is where all the little legends are bigger, and you have 25 extra health, so that you can push for more crazy late game builds a little safer. So these are the 3 we are launching with. There will be more next patch, but these are the 3 to start off with. So look forward to these. And we also added this cool new visual indicator that makes it very obvious if you're in a galaxy. Because at the very start of the carousel, you will see it's a galaxy. So, all right. Some system changes coming up. First off, drop rates wise, there's only one change. At level 8, the legendary cost went from 7% to 6%. Level 8 was a bit too consistent to get legendaries. So we're changing that. We messed up on this one. So refixing that. This is back to what it was in Rise of the Elements. Special carousels occur less often. We're happy with the special carousels. We like that they create cool moments when you start seeing full items and things like that. But we're definitely seeing way too many games where it was like offensive carousel on 2-4, defensive carousel on 3-4, things like that. So, yeah. Not great there. Everyone's yelling at me for typo. Yes, there's a typo, whatever. It's 35. Sorry. Sorry about that. Anyway, moving on. So yeah, special carousels happen a little less often. So most of the time you should get the default carousel, which is 1 of each item plus 1 random. But there will be more. So next up, the rules for which items stay on Champ Combine now prioritizes items on the board. So you can see in the GIF here, you can actually have better control over what items stay on Combine. For those of you doubting my RFC Deathcap Leona build, I'm telling you, secret OP. Go try it. And then lastly, so we do this at the start of every set. I don't know if you noticed, but your planning phases are actually 35 seconds right now, not 30 seconds. So we always do that at the start of the set to get people used to it. And then first patch, we take it out. So this will put game time back to what it was, and should help games be about 3 minutes shorter, which is good. And yes, I coughed once and my chat is saying Corona. Lovely. Okay, trait changes. There are 2 reworks. The first of which is Darkstar. Darkstar is now... we didn't like how Darkstar turned into the situation where it kind of felt not random, but just like uncontrollable. Is like, is my Shaco going to get the stacks, or is my Karma going to get the stacks? And if my Karma gets the stacks, guess I'm screwed. Not to mention, if Karma did get the stacks, what did that get you? Karma's auto attacks are doing 400% damage? Woo! So we wanted to change it to both be a little bit more beneficial to everyone, as well as everyone can benefit from it. So Karma getting stacks would actually be useful. So we've changed it to all champions. So each time someone dies, all champions get attack damage and spell power. Now, what you might forget is people like Jin and Shaco do have AP scalings now. Everyone has AP scalings. So Shaco with 150 attack damage and 150 AP is really big. This is not a nerf, even though it looks like it's a nerf. This is actually probably a substantial buff to their consistency. So, and it's only Darkstar champions that get the buff, not all champions. All other allied Darkstar champions. Next up, Mono Reaver. So Mono Reaver is an interesting spot where, and by interesting I mean no one ever ran for Mono Reaver ever, which isn't great. So what we did was we took the 4-piece and we moved it to the 2-piece. So now if you have 2 Mono Reaver, so now if you're running a Darius, you might consider throwing in a Kassadin, or if you're running a Thresh, you might consider throwing in an Aurelia, things like that. And now every auto attack does this. It is just their auto attacks, but this is really good. Like if I need their front line to not cast, Mono Reaver is really good now. Aurelia is also really good here. This is a big Aurelia buff because as she jumps around, she will apply Mono Reaver. So yeah, this is pretty good. Honestly, I think this is really strong, but we'll see. This should hopefully be a good way to counter some of those pesky Gangplanks and other frontline casters. Other trait adjustments, there's some small ones. Blademester 6 has been underperforming, so we're going to buff Blademester 6. If you're willing to go deep into Blademester, it's now a 60% chance to proc. This might look like a small buff, but the thing to remember is Blademester can proc Blademester, and every little percent here kind of like exponentially scales it, so this is actually a pretty big buff. So 6 Blademaster should be a bit more viable, get those Kale carries going. Brawler 4, it's crazy, actually overperformed our expectations, especially with all the magic damage in the field right now. Brawler was a sizable, it's probably the best front line in the game, so we're just putting a little bit down on that, minus 50 HP. So Chrono 6. Chrono is in a good spot in that 2 Chrono is great. If you can afford 2 Chrono, it's good. 4 Chrono is even okay. It's not amazing, but like it can work. But 6 Chrono has basically been a trap. So you shouldn't really be running 6 Chrono. Part of that is the explosive meta, which we do see slowing down with some of the changes you'll see here. But another part of that is just like fights take a while to ramp up. So Chrono is getting us a buff. Next up is Mystic. Mystic is in a weird spot right now. Believe it or not, Mystic 4 is the strongest trait in the game by a significant margin. Excuse me. So we wanted to make it a little bit more of an option to like splash 2 and get a bigger effect. But Mystic 4 not quite being the I win and counter your comp completely, so just a small nerf there. And finally, Sniper. As much as everyone will meme and say snipers are already doing good, we want snipers to be doing good, and they're not doing as good as we want them to be. We want Sniper to be a very strong DPS comp, sort of similar to Ranger. So snipers are getting a bit of a buff here. So yes, Ashe and Jhin will do a little bit better here. Caitlyn as well in the early game. So there you go. That's it for traits. Next up is champs. Caitlyn gets a small quality of life change. Her cast time goes from 1.5 seconds to 1.1, so she'll cast just a little bit quicker. And she'll resume attacking more quickly after the spell. This is just a quality of life to make her not as awkward. So it is a buff, but it's really just to make her not crappy. Xayah is meant to be the premier one cost. If you care about your early game and want a win streak, Xayah is supposed to be the champ that does it. So Xayah gets a buff to make her even more reliable. So I think if you really want an early game win streak, Xayah with Shiv next patch is going to be like top tier. So we'll see. Ziggs. The Ziggs buff is really minor. It's interesting. If you look at the data, Ziggs is actually underperforming. He looks pretty bad. But I think what that is obviously a lot of people are playing Rebels and a lot of people are playing it wrong. So the problem is, though, if Ziggs got Seraphs, it was kind of a god. Yep, double Seraph Ziggs was still a god. So this nerf is to just make Seraph's Ziggs a little weaker, 1 extra auto attack. Double Seraph Ziggs, if you can somehow pull it off, will still be really good. But single Seraph Ziggs will be a little bit weaker and a little bit less of the early game domination it was before. He'll still be a strong item carrier for Aurelion Soul. That's always been his intent. So, and lastly, Zoe. Zoe's in a really weird spot right now. If you look at the 1 costs, Zoe is the worst 1 cost by a significant margin early game. But then she like transitions, and later she's actually pretty good. Mid to late game, she's actually surprisingly strong. So we're going to buff her up a little bit so that Star Guardian, if you're running her in a Star Guardian comp, she'll get to cast a little bit more often. And if you do 3-star her, which some people do, the payoff is a little bit better. So she'll actually hit pretty hard. All that being said, I do think Zoe might even need more buffs later, but this is a good step in the direction. So, but yeah, 3-star Zoe with 4 Sork will actually hit pretty hard and chunk backlines pretty hard. So, cool. 2 cost. Not a lot of changes here. The first one is a Darius buff. All the silver players are going to be mad at me for this one, but that's okay. Space Pirate is underperforming, believe it or not, and Space Pirate is a lot of fun. We want Space Pirate to be an exciting build. So we are going to buff Darius. That's where we think we can put the buffs, especially because GP is going to get nerfed, as you'll see a little later. So Darius gets a bit more HP, can be a little bit more of that front line, and actually pull off his chain dunks. So, and then lastly is Xin. Xin is interesting in that Xin has become this really crazy premier hyper carry, where if you get him to 3-star with 4 protector, and then you run like Titan's Resolve, Bramble Vest, Dragon's Claw, you have an unkillable god. So what we're doing is we're nerfing Xin. He gets to cast his spell less often, which is good for Protector, because it means he's not getting as much shield. And then to compensate for that just a little bit, he's getting 25 damage back on his spell, because we do like him being a carry. He's supposed to be a carry, but the shield refreshing every, 3 seconds is ridiculous. So we'll see how this does, if we have to go higher. This is the kind of thing we would actually probably keep doing more of the same, where it's like, if he's still strong, we'd probably nerf the mana more and buff the damage more. Because again, we do want him to be a premier carry for Protector. But this just means, again, he doesn't get that 30% HP shield every frickin' 2 seconds. So this is a nerf. Next up, Ezreal. Ezreal has been kind of... It's hard to recognize how valuable he is, but his spell is like free Mono Reaver Shroud on the entire enemy team. So he's just been overperforming a little bit. The other thing is that... I typoed that wrong. I'll fix the Kassadin thing, sorry. In fact, I'm just going to fix that now. Aha! Okay. Sorry. So Blasters have also been overperforming a bit, and so we figured where to nerf Blaster was actually Ezreal. Ezreal made sense, so Ezreal just gets to cast a little slower, and it's a little less damage, more utility. Kassadin. Kassadin, midstream hotfix. Yes, you got me. Kassadin is supposed to be an exciting champion. His AoE disarm is really strong, does a lot of damage. But Celestial, his 2 tags right now are both underperforming. So we're giving Kassadin a pretty sizable buff here. 20 mana is a big buff. We want Kassadin to be an exciting champion you consider. So this should be a good buff to him. Yeah, a lot of people don't realize he has a disarm, but he does. It's quite strong. So hopefully this will make more Kassadin carries a real possibility. And lastly is Shaco. Shaco is the best 3-star 3-cost in the game by a significant margin. And we're going to nerf him. Now, you look at this nerf and you're like, oh, 250, 325, 400. Why doesn't he get the same scalings that other 3-costs do? Well, you have to do the math, and so I made sure to do the math here for you. Beforehand, his spell was going from 483 to 1201. That's insane. That's insane scaling. So, after the nerf, it's now 1068. So, this should... Shaco's still going to be strong. I'm not even... 2-star Shaco with the Dark Star changes, he's still going to be strong. But 3-star Shaco won't quite be this, free win condition that it was before. So, Still going to be real strong. Next up, for cost. Soraka has been underperforming a bit, so has Star Guardian, so giving Soraka a bit of a buff. She gets to cast a little sooner, and when she does cast, it'll heal for a little more. Now, Soraka's in a weird spot because she's like the 1/4 cost you don't care to 3-star. But this should make her an attractive option as a Mystic in your comp. Should be a little bit better. So next up is Vel'Koz. Yes, I know most people are going to be like, it's his AI that's Pepega that you need to fix or whatever. But until we can do that, he needs some buffs right now. So we're giving him 10 off his mana, so that will allow him to cast a little quicker. And then finally, Wukong. Wukong is definitely underperforming a little bit, so we're making him tankier. He's now the tankiest unit in the game, so that'll help. And then in 10-8, we've got some spell fix coming from as well. But this should be a pretty substantial buff for him. Again, he's still a really good premier CC unit. But yeah, so that'll help. Okay, that's it for champ changes. No more. No, just kidding. 5 costs. This is where the changes are. All right, so first up is Aurelion Sol. Aurelion Sol is a strong champion. He's supposed to be a strong champion, especially in a Rebel comp, where he's supposed to be strong. We want him to be strong. But he's overperforming a bit. So there are 2 changes to Aurelion Sol. The first one is that there's just a slight damage nerf. So he's going to do a little less damage. The second one is that we actually changed the way his starships fly around. And this is, we believe, a slight nerf. Because the way it used to work was that it was random, but it was a very weighted random, and so it would very often choose the same targets multiple times, which would allow him to execute important things. Now it is more random completely. Those ships just kind of fly around. So Morello's will be possibly better on him, but he won't be able to finish things off as quickly. So again, from what we've seen in playtests and simulations, it's been a nerf. So, but again, he should still be the premier carry in a Rebel comp, and from what I've seen, he still will be. Next up is Echo. Echo is a bit of a nerf to the Infiltrator comp. Infiltrators are doing very well here. Now, I know everyone's going, but it's Aurelia that's the carry, and why aren't you nerfing Aurelia? And the answer is because we want Aurelia to be the premier carry of the Cybernetic comp. Aurelia is supposed to be good. She benefits from that AD and HP. We want her being the premier carry of the Cybernetic comp. This is a bit of a preemptive nerf as well, though, to the stacking AP Echo that can kind of do what GP was doing, now that GP won't be doing it as well, which is I guarantee hit everyone for 1,000 damage. So just a very small nerf. Tap on the shoulder for Echo. Next up, Gangplank. Gangplank needed massive buffs, so we're tripling his damage. No, just kidding. Gangplank obviously has been the story of 10-6. So he's getting 2 pretty substantial buffs. The first of which is we're changing his mana from 50 out of 150 to 75 out of 175. Now, this isn't actually a nerf because he still casts his spell after 100 mana. But this makes him more susceptible to things like Mana Reaver and Shroud. So there's actually counterplay to the Gangplank. So if you can actually use Shroud and you can use things like that, that's great. The other one, though, this is the big one, obviously, the damage nerf. The damage nerf is big. This is almost a 30% reduction in damage. And the reason for this is that Demolitionist exists. He's still a giant AoE CC. So still think he'll be played. Still think he'll be useful. He's just not instantly wiped down the entire team. So it should be fine. Yep. Sky meowing in the back. It happens. Next up is Lulu. Lulu is in an interesting spot because we like Lulu a lot. Lulu is pretty balanced, actually. Really strong, really powerful, makes a big impact on your team. You want her in your team, which is great. But she needed a small nerf somewhere, specifically to the Shojin version. So what we did was we nerfed her attack speed ever so slightly so that she's a little less synergistic with Shojin. Again, we like Lulu because CC and controlling the pacing of fights is actually really good for readability and things like that. So no major nerfs to Lulu, but Shojin Lulu should just be a little weaker. And lastly, MF. MF gets the same kind of treatment as Gangplank a little bit here. It looks harsher, but it's not. She gets set to 1.0 attack speed, which is still fastest in the set, tied with Gangplank and Fiora. She gets the same mana treatment Gangplank does, which means Shroud is actually really good against her. And then the damage nerf isn't quite as big on her, so when she does cast, it still hits pretty hard. But again, because it can actually miss and do other things, like we're okay with her being pretty strong. So it gets a bit of a nerf here. Now the other thing I want to point out is what our goals are with Mercenary. A Mercenary with 0 upgrades should be worse than other 5 costs. A Mercenary with 1 upgrade should be about the same as other 5 costs. And Mercenaries with 2 and 3 upgrades should be better than other 5 costs. We will be keeping an eye on that as we go from here on out, but that is our goal. Now, before you jump to conclusions and say, this is it, I've understood the meta, please keep watching. There are some bug fixes that also affect the meta pretty heavily. Item changes. Not a lot on the item change side. Morellonomicon and Red Buff getting a 10% nerf. They go from 30 to 27. Red Buff in particular has been overperforming this patch, so we're bringing it down a little bit. So should be good. Static Shiv has been underperforming just a little bit. So we're giving it 5 whole damage back, so now it's the best item in the game. You know, and obviously I'm kidding there, but 5 extra damage will help a little bit. I do expect, again, Xayah with Shiv to be pretty much the best opener in the game, but we'll see. And lastly, Warmogs. Warmogs is getting a slight buff. From what we've seen, Warmogs is underperforming pretty hard. So, now, is there a risk that this becomes Warmogs in? Maybe. Maybe. We'll see. Okay, that's it for items. Other changes. Champions now celebrate when they are victorious in combat. If you haven't seen the Aurelian Soul Dance, here's your chance. It's amazing. It's the best. This is probably the best, most important meta-shifting change we've made this set. So definitely enjoy that. Another big change. Graves' Splash Heart has been updated, so if you're used to buying Graves, just pay attention. And then the last one, this is something we've been meaning to do for a while, and we finally got this in. Echo, Aurelia, Lucian, Xin Zhao, and Echo's attacks are now counted as like auto attacks, which means they can trigger things like Static Shiv, Ginsu's Rage Blade, and Runon's Hurricane. So yes, you can do Echo Static Shiv, for example, and every 3 hits, he'll proc Static Shiv. You'll get stacks of Ginsu's Rage Blade. So this is about making the items actually expect the way they're supposed to. So hopefully this helps. Did I say Echo twice? Yeah, it's because he traveled in time. He was at the start of the time and the end of the time. See? Gotcha there. All right. And this last slide, this is a lot of text, so bear with me. But again, this stuff matters a lot. Okay. So these are the bug fixes. And again, these are very meta, so be careful here. Hand of Justice healing no longer scales with AP. It's a bug. It's fixed now. So if you ever saw it saying 60, that was why. Rebel Shield no longer scales with AP. Yes, it turns out Rebel Shield was scaling with AP. So if you had a death cap on your Aurelian Soul in the middle, he was getting a really big shield. So yeah, fix that. There's your Rebel nerf. Celestial Healing no longer scales with AP. So if you had a high AP character with Celestial, they were healing more than they were supposed to. Got that one fixed. Here's one that actually has a buff to Lucian. Lucian's Relentless Pursuit now properly counts as an attack for the purposes of Blaster trait. So the nice thing here is, like, if you ever ran Seraph Lucian in a Blaster comp, it actually felt like a buff or like a nerf because like you wouldn't get as many Blaster hits. This fixes that, so now Seraph Lucian should actually be good. Fixed an issue where Misfortune would sometimes not turn during bullet time. So if you've seen this before, sometimes she would turn, sometimes she wouldn't turn. It was really frustrating. She's always supposed to turn. We wanted to make her better than set 1 Misfortune. So she's always supposed to, like, move around trying to kill targets. That's fixed. This is a Misfortune buff. So despite all those nerfs, she just got a buff as well. Aurelian Soul now properly works with GA. Hooray! Clarified Shaco's tooltip. Saw a lot of confusion around this. The ability causes a critical hit on top of the bonus damage. So if you have a Bramble Vest and a Shaco hits you, you're still doing that 325% damage. It's just then not critting after. So we made sure to clarify that in the tooltip. No change. We updated Zoe's tooltip to say she does magic damage in case you were confused and thought she was doing physical. We updated Poppy's tooltip to specify she deals magic damage in case you thought that was true for some reason. Okay, here's some big ones. Hextech Gunblade now correctly heals when dealing damage against shields. Turns out, if you had Hextech Gunblade and you were hitting something that was shielding, you were essentially doing no damage and not getting heals. And it turns out, when the meta is full of champions that all start with giant shields, it makes Gunblade not very good. So we fixed that. Celestial bonus now correctly heals when dealing damage against shields. Same thing. And yeah, protectors, rebels. Yep. So, and then lastly, the one that people love to send me a million times. Space Pirates no longer generate gold when attempting to deal lethal damage to a Fiora while she's invulnerable. Bam. No more free gold off that Fiora. Yep. Turns out we had some bugs. But we fixed a lot of bugs. And we'll continue to fix bugs. So... And there's probably other bug fixes that honestly aren't listed here, but these are the ones that mostly affect the meta. So yeah. So that's going to do it for patch 10.7. This goes live April 1st. Hopefully we see an exciting new meta and new things being playable. So yeah. All right, that's going to do it for this. Until next patch, enjoy.